All righty. Good morning, commissioners, and over to you, Chair Harrington.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, November 5th, Washington County Board of Commissioners meeting. Clerk Moss, could you do us the honors, please?
Certainly, Chair Harrington. The Washington County Board of Commissioners, also meeting as the Board of Directors for Clean Water Services and all other county service districts, is meeting this regular session, November 5th, 2024. Commissioner Treese?
Here.
Commissioner Willie?
Here.
Commissioner Rogers?
Here.
Vice Chair Fye?
Present.
Chair Harrington.
Here. All righty, we have a full complement of commissioners. Our next item on the agenda is public communication. Clerk Moss, who do we have who wishes to share their thoughts with us for up to 10 minutes total for the entire set, 2 minutes an individual?
All right. First two we have up is Robert Sood and Dale Feek.
Did the lights get brighter? Yes, they did. Okay.
Should I go first? Good morning. Thank you for inviting me here, giving me the opportunity to express my opinion. I am a retired physician. I moved out here in 2007 from Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, we have, you go to the booth to vote. So when I came here and I saw this system, I thought, this is crazy. Vote it by mail? Why would they want to do that? But after participating in the system for a few years, it's awesome. It has so many advantages. Somebody had an idea. Not all ideas are bad. And I think this idea was really clever. The vote by mail, you can stay at home. Doesn't matter whether the weather is inclement or what. If you're disabled, you can stay at home. You have time to consider the various people that are running for office. And you get a voter's pamphlet. So number one, it's a practical system to stay at home. It increased security. And then it's transparent. If you look at the system, you can go to the Secretary of State, you can go to your county offices if you have any questions about details of voting. And then they have a website that has all the answers all your questions. And the security is amazing because what they do is they take your signature. It's not as good as DNA. It's not as good as fingerprint, but it's pretty doggone good of verifying that you are the person that is doing the voting. And the other thing is, on the security aspect, is they do frequent audits of their system. Between 2000 and 2019, 61 million votes were cast. They only found 38 criminal convictions out of 61 million votes cast. I think that's a pretty good record for security. So I think it's an awesome system. Could there be problems? Sure, but they could be fixed.
And thank
but
you,
the
Mr.
system
Schul.
itself, I think, is very secure and practical.
Thank you. Mr. Feek?
Chair Harrington and Commissioners, I'm Dale Feek from Forest Grove. I sent you an email, but Kevin is handing out in yellow some items I want to emphasize. Yesterday, and you can follow along my yellow, yesterday, November 4th, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency warned that foreign adversaries, especially Russia, are working to undermine public confidence in the integrity of U.S. elections and stoke divisions among Americans. The intelligence community urged Americans to seek out information from trusted official sources, in particular state and local election officials. In the Oregonian, there's below that, it says Oregon elections officials rebut claim of 2022 election irregularities, cite flaws in amateur analysis. A claim from the Missouri-based Sovereign Americans group that Oregon election officials allow massive irregularities and illegal voting in November 2022 is riddled with misunderstandings, doesn't hold up to the scrutiny, state election officials told the Oregon this week. Down to the document. The document the group sent to the state cites alleged discrepancies between snapshot of Oregon's voter rolls from May 2022 and another from September 2023. It said its analysis suggests there were massively compromised systems and potential crimes in the state's November 2022 general election. Oregon elections officials were able to explain why each of the group's 23 allegations of voter registration and election irregularities lacked merit. The allegations involve more than 97,000 voter registrations and 70,000 votes cast. The vast majority of the allegations are based on United Sovereign Americans' misunderstanding of the effective registration date listed for each of the state's 3 million plus voters. Second page, yellow point. Luke LeBlanc, Oregon's deputy elections director, said voter records are complex with many variables. It's entirely possible that someone who does not have an understanding of election administration practices, I'm done. Finish reading that, please, in the last two yellow highlighted statements.
Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
very
Feek.
much.
Next, Madam Chair, we have Linda Feek and Norma Ferrand.
Madam Chair and other commissioners, my name is Linda Feek from Forest Grove. Hallelujah. It is Election Day, and I'm hoping after today, no more tons of emails and texts and all the stuff on TV is going to be done. That part, I'm glad. When the election will ultimately be decided, I'm not sure. I think it's going to take a while. But I used to teach at Westview High School, and driving there, I would take the exit off the Sunset and go up the ramp to 185th and turn left and admire. If I got caught by the traffic light and had to sit there a while, I would just look around at the infrastructure that is needed to make our roads work and our system of transportation work. It's amazing, the investment that has been made by our society. And I think I want to emphasize that I trust our election officials. They're highly trained. Our vote counting system has been tested and audited many times, and I have a lot of faith in what is reported as an actual count. Now, there might be a small percentage that is not okay, but as has been stated, when you have millions of votes, there is going to probably be a small discrepancy. But that doesn't discount the vast majority of the votes that are actually registered. And registering is a whole nother thing. For heaven's sakes, you got to go to the DMV and bring all this, birth certificate and everything. So I have faith in our system. Thank you.
Chair Harrington and Commissioners, I am Norma Ferrand, and I lived in Washington County for nearly 2 years, and resident of Oregon for over 40 years, a legal immigrant since 1950. I have several concerns about our election system. Here are a few. I was involved in the last major presidential election process for many hours, observing the verification of signatures. I wrote down the ID numbers of the ballot signatures that came on the screen that did not appear to match the ballot signatures on record. I submitted my report, and I have no idea what happened to it. Did my observations and report make any difference? Apparently not. Another concern that I have is that people need to see the ballots being counted. Unfortunately, no one can see the ballots being counted because the machines are doing all the counting. No one can see what's going on inside the machines. It is a fact that every machine is hackable. We need to use the more efficient, more reliable, and more transparent system of hand counting the ballots, ideally at the local precinct level, with members present of both of the major political parties. Obviously, the ballots of the illegal immigrants in this country and citizens from other countries must not be counted. One more item of importance is that we must not depart from the Electoral College, because the Electoral College ensures that all areas of the country are represented and not just the most populated areas. Paper ballots, one day in-person voting with signature ID and proof of citizenship, and hand-counting ballots would make our elections more honest and fair. Democracy should be at the precinct level and not controlled by the Secretary of State. We must work in an election system that is truly honest and transparent in every way. Thank you.
Good timing. You ended right.
Thank you. So the last person we have for the 10 minutes here is Steve Pitzel, and the other person on it, your information will be submitted to the commissioners for the record.
My name is Steve Pitzel. I've been a resident of Washington County for 25 years. Madam Chair and Commissioners, I'm one of many in our county who are concerned about our current election system. I'd like to highlight just some of the problems that have made the news in the last couple of months and have caused us not to trust our election system. In September, USA Today reported election officials warned that problems with USPS could cause problems in November election. And also in September, the National Association of Letter Carriers endorses Kamala Harris. Could there be a possible conflict of interest for some letter carriers who really would prefer not to deliver ballots to Republican households? October 29th, Oregon Live reported, Oregon Coast County faces delayed ballot arrival. Voters are urged to seek replacements. Quote, on Tuesday, a week before Election Day, the Coos County clerk reported that an unspecified error at the United States Postal Service has delayed the arrival of ballots to an unknown number of county households, unquote. October 22, we read, breaking, video shows how anyone in U.S. or anywhere in the world can create and print official ballot for made-up voter at any questionable King County, Washington address. And you can watch, step by step, how to create your own official ballot using a fake name. October 23rd, Judicial Watch sues Oregon to force cleanup of voter rolls. Lawsuit alleges Oregon has one of the worst voting lists in the nation. October 28th, we learned that there were ballot box fires in Oregon and Washington and that they're linked. Police identified the suspect's car. October 28th, the Federal Appeals Court rules against counting of ballots received after Election Day. But we count ballots received after Election Day. Are we out of compliance with federal law? We know how to fix all these problems. Please work with us. Thank you.
Anyone else, Clerk Moss?
We had one additional in the room. If you would like to do that, we can do that. Rebecca Zirkle.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I am Rebecca Zirkle. I've lived in Washington County for 20 years. I'd like to bring forth an issue regarding my mother's and my ballot along with my concerns. For the first time since I moved here, I did not receive my ballot, neither did my mother. On October 27th, I called the Washington County Elections Office to find out if our ballots had been mailed. They confirmed that both had been mailed on October 16th. I was told they will remail our ballots and we should receive them by Friday, November 1st, or I could go into their office and they would give me replacements. I was also told that many other people were calling in who had not received their ballots either. Here are my questions and concerns. 1, where are these missing ballots? They made no mention of looking into the issue, nor did they act concerned about it. Number 2, they also said not to worry about the double votes as they only count the first ballot received. What if my completed ballot is not the first to be received? How do I know that the ballots that will show up on the tracker are in fact my ballots and not the missing ballots? Number 4, all that I had to do to get replacements was provide our name and address. Certainly this opens opportunities up for anyone to request and receive any ballot they choose. Why is this happening en masse for the 2024 election? My mom and I received our ballots on Friday, November 1st, but I have no confidence in the validity of actual ballots received and counted since the missing ballots could be submitted and counted first. In my humble opinion, if Washington County or the state of Oregon is truly concerned about having free and fair elections, a tighter process should be enacted for the handling of ballots from beginning to end. The process should definitely include requiring valid IDs to obtain and to submit a ballot. Are we truly verifying signatures on mail-in ballots? Have we reviewed and cleaned up our voter rolls? Thank you for your time. It's my hope that at least Washington County shows some initiative to ensure fair elections are done for the residents.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of our first public comment period. Next, we'll move on to today's consent agenda, which consists of 17 different items. 2 sets of minutes, 1 item from Clean Water Services, 3 items from Facilities, Fleet, and Parks, 3 items from the Office of Community Development, 1 item from Health and Human Services, 1 from Housing Services, 3 items from Human Resources, and 3 items from Land Use and Transportation. What are the wishes of the commission?
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor of adopting today's consent agenda, please raise your hand or vote aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to boards and commissions. Today, we have the opportunity to appoint Rich McConaughey from November 2024 through March 2029 to fill a midterm vacancy plus an additional 4-year term to the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee here in Washington County. What are the wishes of the commission on this appointment?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Congratulations and thank you, Mr. McConaughey. Next, we'll move on to proclamations, and I'd like to invite our staff up to the table. Today, we have an opportunity to proclaim the time period from November 4th through 11th, 2024 as Operation Green Light for Veterans here in Washington County. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Well, good morning, Chair Harrington, Board of County Commissioners. My name is Mira Supplemental. I'm the Director of Health and Human Services here for Washington County. I'm pleased to be here today for our 3rd consecutive year for the proclamation for Operation Greenlight, and it's an honor and privilege to be here on Election Day for this special proclamation. I will introduce Vicki Horn. She is our Veteran Services Supervisor and a veteran herself, and she will be making a brief presentation and reading today's proclamation. Vicki?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It's an honor to be here today. So in Washington County, current census data shows that we have about just over 25,000 veterans in Washington County. Of those, 5.5% are veterans. Nearly half are over the age of 65, which makes us well placed in the Disability, Aging, and Veteran Service Office because we often can offer services in both areas. 52% of our veterans are served in the Vietnam era, and 29% of our veterans served in the Gulf War. And many of you are aware of the PACT Act that happened earlier this past year, which has increased the volume of claims that we're doing in our office substantially. Over 29% of veterans experience some type of disability compared to 13% of the regular population. And there are currently 138 veterans in Washington County that work in Washington, at Washington County, I should say. Disability, Aging, and Veteran Services, we, that's our staff there, help veterans and their families apply to receive millions of dollars in federal health care, disability compensation, and pension benefits each year. This year we filed over 7,000 claims documents for Washington County veterans, which is a substantial number. Since 2012, when we got our data collection system, we've served over 15,000 veterans in our office. We connect veterans with other programs that help them treat mental health and substance use disorders. We have a relationship with the Vet Center, which specifically helps veterans address PTSD related to combat or military sexual trauma. And we also support veterans in accessing stable housing, with November 15th being our annual stand down. It'd be lovely to see anyone there that would like to attend. Facilities has done an excellent job again this year. Oh, got excited there. Again, we really appreciate their support. They have changed the lights at the Public Service Building, the courthouse, the Juvenile Services, and Justice Services buildings. They're illuminated green and will be green until from November 4th through the 11th as part of Operation Greenlight for veterans. This is the national collaborative initiative between the National Association of Counties and also the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers. It's to support military veterans as well as raise awareness about the unique challenges faced by many veterans and the resources that are available at the county, state, and federal level to assist veterans and their family. And this is our third year participating. I've brought a few light bulbs with me today. We didn't buy the number that we did last year, but if anybody needs a light bulb, they're more than welcome to take one. And with that, would you like me to read the proclamation? Whereas the contributions and sacrifices of those who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and way of life enjoyed by our community members, and whereas studies indicate that up to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life, and whereas veterans continue to serve our community in the American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, religious group, civil service, nonprofit organizations, and through employment at Washington County, and whereas Washington County Disability, Aging, and Veteran Services, 6 veteran service officers assist former service members in accessing millions of dollars in federal health care, disability compensation, and pension benefits each year, and whereas Washington County has great respect, admiration, and gratitude for the men and women who have selflessly served our country and this community in the armed forces, and whereas Washington County seeks to honor individuals who make countless sacrifices for freedom by placing themselves in harm's way for the good of all, now therefore be it resolved that on this 5th day of November 2024, the Washington County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim November 4th through the 11th of 2024 Operation Greenlight for Veterans in Washington County. We encourage all cities, towns, and community members to honor our veterans by displaying a green light in their home or business and joining with the county as we illuminate green the Public Service Building, the courthouse, Juvenile Services Building, and the Justice Services Building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What are the wishes of the commission with regard to a motion to proclaim as read today? Any comments before we take such a vote? No? Okay. Everyone in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Would you like us to join you in a picture moment? Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you.
And for those, thank you, community. For those in the audience who are veterans, if you would like to join us, please do so here in the front. I don't care what you do. Next, we have a series of 4 different public hearings, and the first one is related to a resolution and order to adopt the fiscal year 24-25 Washington County Supplemental Budget. Welcome, Ms. Ann Ober, one of our Assistant County Administrators, and to Steve Kang, our Budget Manager.
Good morning. Ann Ober, Assistant County Administrator for Internal Services.
Good morning, Chair Harrington and Steve and Commissioners. My name is Steve Kang, Budget Manager for the county.
So you are not used to seeing me up at the dais when we're talking about budget, but as many of you know, the public may not know that Greg Munn is no longer with the county. His last day was November 1st. While we are in this interim period, I am here to support Steve Kang, who is doing an amazing job. Today we're here to present a supplemental budget amendment. There are 15 amendments that we're going to walk you through, and then we're going to open up the public hearing. Go for it.
Thank you. So before I jump into the supplemental budget, I'll provide a brief overview of our supplemental budget process for the public. After the budget is adopted in June, departments have 3 opportunities to adjust their budget, and that's through the fall, spring, and year-end supplemental budgets. These adjustments address a variety of factors, including carry-forwards, new or additional revenues, projected expenditure increases, or clerical or administrative adjustments that were not known at the time of the budget adoption. The agenda item before you is the fall supplemental budget for fiscal year 24-25. I'll provide an overview of the request, highlight some key items. However, the details of each items are included in the agenda item. The total for the fall supplemental budget request is $48.2 million across 13 funds and 15 individual request items. Following are some of the key components. First, carry-forwards from prior fiscal year totaling $2.6 million. The primary item in this category is $2 million of the carry forward for the broadband investment, which was approved as part of the fiscal year 23-24 budget. Next, there are new grants and additional revenues amounting to approximately $20 million. The largest component here, $15.2 million of allocation for Center for Addictions, Triage, and Treatment. This funding comes from several sources, including House Bill 5204, lottery allocations, and a new federal community project funding award. Finally, we have a category of miscellaneous adjustments totaling $23.9 million. These adjustments include clerical and technical adjustments and items that were not anticipated at the time of budget adoption. Majority of this request is coming from a supportive housing services for $22.4 million to align the current year budget with the fund balance carryover spending down plan submitted to Metro in August 2024, which was after the budget adoption. There is one item involving the use of the general fund contingency. This pertains to the sale of a property which was originally purchased with Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program Fund, which is also known as MISTIP Fund. The proceeds for this property sale were deposited into general fund in the amount of approximately $1.2 million. And this request will transfer those funds from general fund back to the MISTIP Fund. That concludes the staff presentation, and we're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Board members, do you have any questions? I do. Item 5, Metzger Park. Was this project funded originally through the Metzger Park LID?
This is a new item, and then the additional appropriation request is the items that were not anticipated at the time. There was an increase in the cost of certain contracts and other professional activities, and then this would use the contingency of the fund to fund those activities.
Okay, so it's using the Metzger Park contingency dollars, not general fund dollars.
That is correct.
Thank you. I hadn't gotten to that part of my question, so.
Yeah, Chair, if I can just add to that, because I'm just, sorry.
Sorry.
Over here.
Yep.
Just for members of the public as well. Metzger Park is operated through a local improvement district, which means all operations, maintenance, improvements, administrative overhead must be contained within the cost structure of the local improvement district. Each year, those costs are assessed to the local property owners for those improvements. And that was a change in implementation to reduce general fund support to the local improvement district about a year ago.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the clear answer on that. So, time for a public hearing. So at this juncture, I'd like to open the public hearing related to the Washington County supplemental budget for this current fiscal year 24-25. Clerk Moss, do we have anyone who wishes to testify during this public hearing?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I did not see anyone sign up in the back room. Would any member in the auditorium wish to provide public comment on this public hearing? As you've heard from the staff report, for up to 2 minutes. Give you just a moment to raise hand or start coming forward. Not seeing any in the room. Would any member online wish to provide public comment on this public hearing? As you've heard from the staff report, give you just a moment to utilize raise hand function. Not seeing any hands. Chair Harrington.
And with that, I will close today's public hearing and ask for a motion to approve the resolution in order to adopt the supplemental budget for fiscal year 24-25.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye on the motion. Thank you, Commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to one of two land use and transportation related items and roads. This one is to legalize a portion of Southwest Robbins Road as County Road 3347. Hello there, Mr. Shetler. Staff report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Harrington, members of the board. I'm Stacy Shetler, County Engineer with Land Use and Transportation. And before you, as the chair mentioned, is the legalization of Robbins Road. This is in District 3, Robbins Road. They're circled in red, and it runs between the Washington County, Clackamas County line there, 65th, on the right of the screen, and runs east-west. And this road has been maintained and owned by Washington County for, I think, since 1919, so quite a while. But there's uncertainty as where the legal location of the roadway is. Based on the research and the records that and other features in the area, we've determined that we need to do the legalization. And so as I mentioned before, based on the maps and records we have, it's been traveled in its current location for over 60 years. It qualifies for the legalization under the ORS's, the Oregon Revised Statutes. And because of the date that it was established as a county road, 40 feet is what's recommended for the base width. And there are no permanent private structures located in the proposed right-of-way. Adjacent property owners were notified per the statute. There's no known opposition to the legalization of this road, but you may get some more input from the public during today's public hearing. So with that, I request that you conduct a public hearing and then approve the resolution in order. Thank you. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Shetler. Commission members, any questions? Seeing none, with that, I'd like to open today's public hearing with regard to Southwest Robbins Road.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I did not see anyone in the auditorium sign up in the back room. Would any member in the auditorium wish to provide public comment on this public hearing? As you've heard the staff report, give you just a moment to raise your hand, start coming forward. Not seeing any in the room, would any member online wish to provide comments for up to 2 minutes on this public hearing? As you've heard from staff, give you just a moment to utilize raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, I will close today's public hearing and ask for a motion to adopt the resolution and order legalizing a portion of Southwest Robbins Road as County Road 3347.
Moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. And next, on to Southwest Midway Road. Mr. Shetler.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Again, I'm Stacy Shetler, County Engineer with Land Use and Transportation. And we've got up next the Midway Road, County Road 3348. This road is also in District 3, and it runs between the Oregon Route 219 south to Vandashire Road. And it's also been maintained by the county for many years. I think the date is 1910. But there is uncertainty as to the legal location of the road, and that was found. We had a bridge project out there a couple years ago, and so we got it on our work plan to go out there and survey. Based on the maintenance records and the fences and the other features out there, we determined that the road has been traveled in its current location for over 60 years. It qualifies for legalization under the Oregon Revised Statutes. 40 feet is the recommended base width for the road, and there are no permanent private structures located in the proposed right-of-way. Adjacent property owners were notified per the statute, and there's no known opposition to the legalization of Midway. We did have several phone calls. People were concerned. They had questions. Was the road going to be widened? Is this going to affect anything? And the answer to that was no. But you may also get some additional input from today's public hearing. So with that, I request that you conduct a public hearing and then approve the resolution in order legalizing Midway Road. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Shetler? Okay, clerk. Oh, whoops. First, I have to open today's public hearing. Clerk Moss, do we have anyone who wishes to testify with regard to Southwest Midway Road as County Road 3348?
Okay. Thank you, Chair Harrington. I did not see anyone sign up in the back of the room in the auditorium. Would any member in the auditorium wish to provide public comment on this public hearing as you've heard the staff report? Give you a moment just to raise your hand, start coming forward. Not seeing any in the room. Would any member online wish to provide public comments on this public hearing as you've heard the report from staff? Give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Chair Harrington.
All right, then with that, I'll close today's public hearing and ask for a motion to approve the resolution and order legalizing Southwest Midway Road as County Road 3348.
I second that motion.
All those in favor of the motion, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Now we're getting on to a big topic we've been working on for a while, significant natural resources. And we have two different ordinances, and I would first like to ask for a motion to have Engrossed ordinance numbers 901 and 902 read by title only.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, please vote. Thank you by raising your hand or saying aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Ms. Duke-Dreesen, could you do us the honors, please?
My pleasure, Madam Chair. Engrossed Ordinance Number 901, an ordinance amending the Comprehensive Framework Plan for the urban area and all community plans relating to development in areas designated significant natural resources, and Engrossed Ordinance Number 902, an ordinance amending the Community Development Code relating to development in areas designated significant natural resources.
Thank you. And with that, we will have a staff report. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. Teresa Cherniak, Principal Community Planner. I am here mostly for helping with questions. Michelle Miller will do the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Michelle Miller. I'm a Senior Planner in Community Planning. This is the public hearing on Engrossed Ordinance Number 901 and 902, amendments to the Goal 5 Program for Significant Natural Resources. Since some general questions were raised at our last hearing on October 22nd, and there may be some new people listening in for the first time about Significant Natural Resource Project, we're briefly going to go over some of the background and provide an overview of the ordinances and address some of the specific testimony we received at the last hearing. Then I'm going to finish up with the staff recommendations to adopt the ordinances, findings, and related resolutions and order. A brief refresher on the background of why we are updating the Goal 5 inventory and developing new regulations at this time. Since the 1970s, the foundation of the statewide program for land use planning in Oregon has been the 19 statewide planning goals. We're focusing on statewide planning Goal 5. It requires local governments identify and protect significant natural resource areas. It also affects other resources like historic or scenic, but our focus is on the natural resources. The Oregon Administrative Rules outline the process for how we comply with statewide planning Goal 5 for the different natural resources. We adopted our Goal 5 program with an inventory and regulations in the early 1980s, following older Oregon administrative rules. Since that time, the rules have changed along with an important change to state law. In 2017, the legislature expanded the requirement for land use regulations to be clear and objective when they applied to housing. This change in state law impacted our natural resource regulations as they were found to not be clear and objective. As a result, our natural resource regulations have been under legal scrutiny. We adopted regulations in 2020 to address the state law clear and objective requirement, but those standards were appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals and remanded back to the county for further changes. In May of 2023, the Land Use Conservation and Development Commission ruled that because our natural resource regulations are not clear and objective, we're then out of compliance with Goal 5. The LCDC enforcement order directs us to make changes to our regulations. They've also issued a stay on development that may affect wildlife habitat, a type of county natural resources, until our new regulations are adopted. This map shows the urban area of Washington County, with the tan gray color showing the incorporated or city areas, and the blue and orange encompassing the urban unincorporated area, or our study area for this project. The blue area is where we're doing the bulk of the mapping and analysis internally, and it was part of the original inventory work the county did in the 1980s. The orange area, or those new community plan areas, where the cities or perhaps the county have done their own Goal 5 planning more recently. And in most cases, we have incorporated that into our work. We've had some comments and questions come up at the last hearing about the areas that would be affected or impacted by the regulations. The S&R standards would apply to areas in the urban unincorporated area only. And someone mentioned West Dairy Creek and Dairy Creek Park, and those are both in the city of Hillsboro and not in our study area. So the regulations do not apply to that area. This graphic shows the consolidated process we used to get to our updated mapping and the new significant natural resource categories that have been created as a result of this process. The column on the left are the county's current 3 natural resource categories from our original inventory. The middle column shows the categories from Metro's inventory, which we used in our update process. And the results are the new county significant natural resource categories, which will be shown on the maps as riparian wildlife habitat, and the county's which is mainly Metro riparian habitat, with some of the county's wildlife habitat that might have overlapped with the riparian habitat. And then the new county upland wildlife habitat is a combination of former county wildlife habitat and Metro's upland wildlife habitat found to be significant. This slide shows the hearing timeline for these ordinances. We've had 3 hearings on the ordinances over the past summer with our Planning Commission, who recommended to the board that the board approve the ordinances with some changes. On October 1st, the board conducted a public hearing and ordered engrossment of both ordinances. We had our first engrossment hearing on October 22nd and received oral and written testimony, and the hearing was continued till today. Today's public hearing is the second required engrossment hearing on these ordinances. If the ordinances are adopted, the board is to consider findings and 2 other resolutions and orders through a separate action. Next, I'm going to briefly discuss Ordinance Number 901, the amendments to the Comprehensive Framework Plan and our community plans. In the Comprehensive Framework Plan, we're updating the related significant natural resources maps and policies. For the community plans, we are removing design elements that are no longer applicable that related to significant natural resources and updating the maps to reflect the changes to our inventory. Since we filed the notice in June about the ordinance and mailed notice to the affected property owners, staff and the Planning Commission received requests to change our published maps. Requests received by August 31st were reviewed by staff and the consultant team, and those requests that met the criteria in the draft habitat inventory report, those have been incorporated into the Engrossed Ordinance Number 901. For map change requests that came in after August 31st, we intend to prepare an omnibus map amendment ordinance in late 2025 to incorporate those corrections that meet the criteria that were received from that August 31st deadline and August 31st of the following year. At the last hearing, you received a map change request after August 31st, and our plan is to address that property owner through this process. Now briefly about Ordinance Number 902, amendments to our Community Development Code. Riparian wildlife habitat and mapped upland wildlife habitat have different development standards based on their different levels of habitat protection. Some development will be exempt from the requirements that apply to significant habitat, including repairs within the building footprint and removal of hazardous, diseased, or dying trees. Exemptions for wildlife habitat also include construction, maintenance, and repair of public park projects, transportation facilities, public utilities, and mineral extraction. Also, small lots and lots with a very small amount of upland wildlife habitat that don't contain any riparian habitat. For our riparian wildlife habitat areas, our regulations are similar to the current requirements. Development is strictly to moderately limited, but some development activity is allowed as shown here. Even though these activities are allowed, it doesn't mean that they're not subject to other state or local regulations like clean water service requirements or the Departments of State Land permitting requirements. For upland wildlife habitat, the proposed regulations will not change the currently allowed land uses. Development is still allowed. The focus is on tree retention or replacement. It provides a clear and objective path that includes a tree inventory, assignment of points based on the size, species, and location of the trees, and retention or planting requirements that include tree spacing and tree mix. We also have included 2 alternative discretionary paths to attain that would attain the level of tree habitat protection identified in the ESEE analysis. And thirdly, we provide a greater degree of protection for upland wildlife habitat within the areas added to the urban growth boundary after 2005 in order to comply with Metro Title 13 requirements. The proposed rules provide a simple permit process for tree removal in upland wildlife habitat on private property for trees within an existing on-site disturbance area of 10,000 square feet on the property, or in the alternative, trees located around the 20-foot perimeter of an existing habitable building. And if the property owner wants to remove more trees within the upland wildlife habitat, but it's outside the disturbance area or the perimeter area, they need to follow the tree retention and replacement requirements that I've talked about earlier. So several questions arose from the testimony at the last hearing, and we've heard the concerns about monitoring and enforcement of mitigation planting when required through the development review process. In response to this concern, the board could direct staff to research and develop options for monitoring enforcement, including increased penalties for noncompliance and possibly setting up a bond mechanism to better ensure survival of the regulated trees as an upcoming work program task, because it's outside of our scope of our current project. Through the testimony, we also received a request to proactively record deed notes or restrictions indicating the presence of significant habitat on individual properties. We've discussed this internally, and our county council advises that adding deed notes or restrictions requires the property owner's consent. And so the county is unable to compel owners to sign a deed note or restriction unless they're submitting a land use application. Lastly, we received a comment that you may have received over the weekend, a letter from the Tualatin River Keepers requesting that the board consider changes to the alternative boundary methodology we've developed for riparian habitat, and we do not recommend this change at this time. Staff is recommending that the board conduct the second required engrossment hearing for A engrossed ordinance numbers 901 and 902. And at the conclusion of the public hearing, adopt A engrossed ordinance numbers 901 and 902. And by separate action, adopt the following by resolution in order: the findings for the ordinances, amendments to the resource document, including a revised preface, a new volume 1A that includes the habitat inventory report and the Goal 5 report with the ESEE analysis and the Metro Title 13 compliance. And thirdly, the resolution in order of the Washington County Native Tree List. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Commissioners, do you have any questions on any part of the presentation that was provided today? Seeing none, I do. On slide 16, it's the slide about additional testimony, concern about monitoring and enforcement, and that we could direct staff. But that is a decision we don't have. I want to make sure I believe that we don't need to make that decision today. Rather, we can look at what the overall work plan is and potentially consider it then.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you have a question, Commissioner Willie?
No, I was actually exactly what you said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Terrific. All right. Well, at this juncture then, I would like to open the second required engrossment hearing for Engrossed ordinances 901 and 902. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I did not see anyone in the auditorium sign up. Would any member in the auditorium wish to provide public comment on this public hearing as you've heard the staff report? I'll give you just a moment to raise your hand, start coming forward. I'm not seeing any in the room, so we have a list online, starting with Andrea D'Amico. Andrea, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. My name is Andrea D'Amico. I'm a member of Save Shoals and reside in Washington County. I want to thank Michelle Miller for clarifying 901 and 902 to give me a better understanding and working hard to solve the public's concerns. Mitigation is not equal to SNRs. Look at the mitigations around you. SNRs should remain SNRs. We only have 3,900 acres, 3,200 riparian, 700 upland wildlife, and we don't like seeing dead wild animals on the road. They will have nowhere else to go. Mitigation is nothing more than sapling trees, a swamp. It's not 100-year-old trees, natural waterways, or a place for wildlife. Leave the SNRs natural and work around them. I've seen it done in development, and it is possible. But if a work program is to be produced in the future, please have staff investigate and come up with a plan that is monitored and enforced that would make mitigation successful. I also don't understand if 901 and 902 are not affecting areas outside the UGB, then why is it in 901 and 902? I was told there will be a separate ordinance addressing the areas outside the UGB in the future. Why make 901 and 902 so confusing by adding areas not supposedly affected? One of the goals of 901 and 902 was to make it less confusing, and by adding extra areas just makes it more. Please think about the future of Washington County. These ordinances will affect our county forever. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Chris Helmsworth. Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Chris Helmsworth. I'm a resident of unincorporated Washington County, and I'd like to go on record as being opposed to Ordinance 901 and 902. The changes appear to benefit one particular organization, the Portland Golf Club, to the detriment of users of a public facility, the Fannel Creek Trail. Moreover, this change benefits a group, the Portland Golf Club, that has seemingly been trying to skirt existing land use rules, and has been reported to Clean Water Services without any apparent action being taken. I ask you not to adopt 901 and 902 and act for the benefit of the greatest number of our citizens rather than a few privileged individuals. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Brooke Batchelor. Brooke, are you there?
I am here.
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. My name is Dr. Brooke Batchelor, and I'm a family medicine and lifestyle physician living in West Slope. You may recognize my name as the Vice Chair of CPO3, but I share my own perspectives today. I come to you today because I am concerned about the current SNR designations around Portland Golf Club as well. My ask is to consider expanding the SNR designations around the golf club specifically into an R5 zoned like southern southwestern area that is indeed a wetland right next to the currently designated riparian and upland wildlife habitat, but not yet currently recognized on the SNR map as such. So expanding those areas. It really wouldn't be a huge expansion, and it would make a huge difference. I feel that wetlands should be protected anyway, given all of the benefits, but this SNR designation is especially pressing given Portland Golf Club has been completing some unauthorized clearing and has a proposed plan to dump dredge material into this wetland area that has a strong potential for polluting the wetland and water supply and causing harm to our community's health and wildlife's health. As a physician, I spend a lot of my time thinking, especially family physician, thinking about our community's health, and I realize how important these natural areas are and how closely they are, how closely linked to both physical and mental health of residents they are. And wildlife also really needs a place to land. So these are true resources, true gifts that we should protect. My heart honestly drops every time I see another tree come down in my neighborhood, which seems to be more frequent, and when I observe these increasing developments in natural areas. And at this truly critical juncture with our changing climate, every little bit of protection counts in every corner of the world, and to keep maps as they are is not in the best interest of the health of the community as a whole. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Next, we have Jim Long. Jim, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Okay, good morning. It's election day. I'm a firm believer in elections. In my previous testimony a couple of weeks ago for CPO4M, I stated that there were a number of areas that were unclear for protecting significant natural resources, including monitoring and enforcement, and that's what Goal 5 addresses. A suggestion I made back then was for clarification and to reduce liabilities. I suggested that real estate deeds include a statement about significant natural resources on specific properties. I just heard that the county council thinks that requiring that will require the property owner's consent. I would like to see you continue to look into this matter and try and find a resolution. I firmly believe it will decrease liabilities and provide clarification. There appears to be problems with compliance with the quote clear and objective unquote standards set forth both the needed housing statute and Goal 5 administrative rules. The quote alternative path unquote idea mentioned by staff only applies to regulations governing quote appearance or aesthetics unquote ORS 197.3076. The SNR rules do not govern appearance or aesthetics. 901 and 902 should not be past its current state because of the valuations, the tree valuations. Is there any scientific evidence to support the numbers cited for tree evaluations or tree valuations? We agree Oregon oak should be protected and other species should also be protected. I support the Tualatin Riverkeeper's recommended changes. And you know that I've lived for 4 decades in rural Washington County, and I really would love to hear your plans for protecting significant natural resources outside the urban growth boundary, or whether it's agriculture, industrial. I would love to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Madam Chair, we have Eve Goldman. Eve, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Great. Good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. My name is Eve Goldman, and I am the staff attorney for the Tualatin Riverkeepers. Thank you to Michelle Miller and planning staff for their work in bringing Washington County into compliance with Goal 5 in relation to SNRs. However, TRK still opposes Ordinances 901 and 902 as currently written. I'll be using this time to read my most recent comments on behalf of the Tualatin Riverkeepers into the record. Among other recommendations outlined in previous comments and public testimony, TRK recommends that commissioners amend language in proposed rule CDC 422-8.1 that establishes methodologies for determining and verifying riparian buffer zones. Methodology 2 states that a qualified natural resources professional shall establish the riparian wildlife habitat boundary. And it establishes a minimum buffer width of 50 feet for all water areas, with the exception of the Tualatin River, which has a recommended minimum buffer of 125 feet. As we have expressed previously, we believe that these minimums do not meet what we need for riparian buffers. Speaking with Washington County Planning staff, it appears that these standards are developed using Clean Water Services guidelines, which are supposed to be reviewed every 2 years. Clean Water Services is set to review and update these guidelines in 2026, and accordingly, to avoid additional amendments to the CDC that would result from updates to these guidelines, TRK recommends replacing the specific minimum buffer standards language with language indicating CDC will develop these standards based on Clean Water Services guidelines as done in practice. This is our opportunity to leave a legacy of resource protection in our county, and we ask that you provide stronger protections in these riparian areas. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Eve. Is there any other member online that wishes to provide public comment for up to 2 minutes on this public hearing? As you've heard from staff report, give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any additional hands. Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, I will close today's public hearing and thank everyone who provided additional comment today. At this juncture, I would like to ask for a motion to adopt Engrossed ordinance numbers 901 and 902.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Clerk Moss, could you do the roll call, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Commissioner Willie?
Yes.
Commissioner Treese?
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fye?
Aye.
Chair Harrington.
Yes. The motion carries unanimously 5-0. My apologies to my colleagues. I neglected to ask if you had any questions or comments with regard to today's public hearing.
I would just like to underscore the comments that have been made previously about the work that staff has done, and thank you very much for, this has been a very long process, and my experience has been you've worked closely with our public voice around this issue, and I really appreciate that. I also want to extend my appreciation to the Planning Commission for their extended view of this as well, so thank you.
I would join you in those thanks. It has been a long, considered program, and we have a few more particulars to get to, but at least now we have something on the books based on clear and objective standards. So we can make improvements from that new base. All right, now for the other parts that really bring this to closure, and let me just double check and make sure that up to this point everything is all square. Okay, great. Well, I'd like to move on to item G1 to adopt the findings for Engrossed ordinance numbers 901 and 902, including the Goal 5 report, and authorize the chair to sign the resolution and order memorializing the action. What are the wishes of the commission?
So move.
All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to item G2, and this is to, let's see, I want to make sure, since your slide talked about amendments, yes, here we go. We have a resolution in order to amend the Washington County Comprehensive Plan resource document, the preface, and adding volume 1A relating to Engrossed ordinances 901 and 902, and authorize the chair to sign the resolution and order memorializing the action.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. And next, the last piece, item G2. G3, thank you. 3 usually does follow 2, so I appreciate your catching that I said the wrong thing. We have a motion before us to adopt the Washington County native tree list associated with Engrossed ordinance number 902 and authorize the chair to sign the resolution and order memorializing this action.
So move.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? That too is adopted unanimously 5-0. So congratulations to you, Teresa, Michelle, and also to Suzanne Savin, who I know has also done some work on this, and to all our community members who have participated, sat through different presentations at CPO meetings, CCI meetings, Planning Commission meetings and hearings. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, and Michelle, may you have the opportunity to work on a different project sometime soon. Next, we're going to move on to our second public comment period of today's meeting. This is an opportunity for members of our community to come and address the board, share your comments with us for up to 5 minutes an individual for a total of 30 minutes max. Clerk Moss, who do we have who wishes to do so?
So first up, Madam Chair, we have Bob Terry, followed by Sandra Nelson.
Good morning, Commissioner Harrington and Commissioners. My name is Bob Terry, former Washington County Commissioner, still a member of the county. During public testimony at the October 24th Clackamas County Board of Commissioners meeting, multiple residents shared their concerns and experiences regarding the election integrity along with presenting United Sovereign Americans resolution for a legally valid 2024 election. That resolution was presented to this board on October the 1st. At the meeting, all citizens wishing to testify were given the opportunity to speak. The commissioners were receptive, supportive, engaged, and responses, with each commissioner added personal testimony regarding the election integrity, and I encourage everyone on this board to watch the meeting online. The board thanked and stated appreciation to those who spoke and attended. Commissioner Shaw commented on the citizens for their sincerity, initiative, extensive work, patriotism, and for their performance at their civic duty. Commissioners West referred to the citizens as their bosses, noting the commissioners' work for and need to listen to their constituents. Commissioner Shaw and West took steps to move the United Sovereign American Resolution to adoption before the November 5th, noting the urgency due to and time of the election. However, due to some previous threats that had been waged against the individuals, Chair Smith canceled all public meetings until after the election, citing the need to lower the temperature of the rhetoric and surrounding the upcoming elections. I might add, most of that rhetoric came from news media. Meanwhile, learning about the election integrity presentation, the media chose to respond negatively and attempted to discredit the testimony of the Clackamas County residents. On October 30th, Commissioner West responded to an op-ed to which 6 local mayors and contributed to his key comments were: 1, concerned citizens have a right to engage their government by bringing their redresses before the elected representatives, and that their free exchange of ideas and foundations to our democracy. The mayor's negative characterization of Clackamas residents were untruthful and unwarranted. Oregonians have reasons to be concerned with the integrity and the elections. The state recently uncovered 1,200 people illegally to be on the voter rolls. Agreement with Governor Kotek, who said, any error that undermines our voting system must be taken incredibly seriously and addressed. Many Oregonians want to be able to trust our elections and to support full independent audit of our election rolls. There are real threats to our system, and dirty voter rolls discouraging healthy policy debates and castings our neighbors, and threats to democracy, and reinforces these sentiments. Also, on October 30th, Commissioner Scholl sent a letter to the Oregon Secretary of State requesting independent audit of the Oregon voter rolls to initiate by the integrity of nonpartisan issues, and believes in the audit could help ease concerns by bringing transparency in election operations, potential modifications of procedures. I've provided you with copies of both letters. Residents of our county desire similar engagement with our board and free exchange of ideas. We encourage members of the board to take the steps needed to adopt the United Sovereign American Resolution to legally validate 2024 election, and so request the Secretary of State and the audit outlined by the Commissioner Scholl. We also want to once again exercise our county rights to home rule, to separate from the failed statewide election system. Please note that House Bill 2004 has recently ranked choice voting legislation, clearly states in 4 different places exemptions of home rule jurisdiction of the charter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Chair and Commissioners, my name is Sandra Nelson. I've been a resident of Washington County for about 40 years. Thank you. I'm also a volunteer, not a spokesperson for United Sovereign Americans. We have asked you several times to sign our resolution for a legally valid 2024 election, and so far you haven't. But perhaps a greater understanding of the background of United Sovereign Americans will help you to support this resolution. So let me take just a minute or two to tell you about the organization's CEO, Marley Hornick, and co-founder and chairman of the board, Harry Howry. Ms. Hornick is the executive director of New York Citizens Audit, a nonpartisan group of citizens dedicated to restoring and maintaining the essential founding American principle of sovereignty through honest, provable elections in New York and across the nation. She is a champion of individual liberty, and under her leadership, her team has made great strides in uncovering a host of issues, including presenting evidence to the New York State Police Special Investigations Unit on June 27, 2022, that seems to reflect large-scale illegal manipulation of the New York State voter database. Mr. Howry served as a consultant to the team that authored the Help America Vote Act of 2002. A nationally recognized subject matter expert in the areas of cybersecurity and workflow, his focus was on technology and operational integrity. He has been employed by several government agencies, including the National Security Agency, Central Intelligence Agency, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and Comptroller of the Currency, just to name a few. You can read much more about his impressive resume in the handout I will give to you after I speak. Thanks. He's now volunteering his time, talents, and treasure to try to save our republic. He's not an extremist, nor are the thousands of other credentialed, credible, and professional volunteers with USA, which include, quote, lawyers, data analysts, logicians, intelligence community alumni, programmers, forensic investigators, and auditors, unquote. As with everything in life, it all comes down to whom you trust. Who is trustworthy and has a track record to prove it? Who has sacrificially served others for their flourishing and freedom? Incidentally, those are the kind of people here in Washington County who have been working for the past 3 years to uncover the truth about our elections in our county and our state. I choose to trust people like that, and I hope you do too. In addition to supporting the USA resolution, here are some reasons to support our work in general and to change our election system to be truly secure, transparent, and valid. 1, the people want it. For example, both our federal and state constitutions demand that only citizens vote, and 90% of the general population say they want that too. A large majority of people also think we should have voter IDs with proof of eligibility. Number 2, all the evidence points to major problems, flaws, and gross opportunities for fraud in our current system. 3, we know what it takes to ensure fair, honest, secure, transparent, and less costly elections, and to once again instill confidence and trust in the electorate. And finally, as we read the law, even local election officials like you have the responsibility to ensure that we have valid elections. We urge you to consider other legal opinions regarding home rule and not succumb to fear or to the dictates of our Secretary of State. Regardless of the results of this election, we who care about valid elections are not going away. We're here for the long haul to encourage you and to support you in doing the right thing, to ensure that Washington County has fair, accurate, and trustworthy elections. Thank you.
All right, next, Madam Chair, we have Karen Schmidlin and Mary Chilopoulos.
Good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. My name is Karen Schmidlin. I'm a 40-plus year resident of Washington County, and my topic today concerns state legislation, HB 3291, that took effect on 1/1/22. The bill summary states, ballots returned by mail require a postal indicator showing their ballot was mailed by the date of election and must be received by the county clerk no later than 7 days after the date of the election. There's a section of this law that is rarely mentioned, which states, if the elector returns a ballot by mail and a postal indicator is not present or legible, the ballot shall be considered to be mailed on the date of the election and may be counted if the ballot is received no later than 7 calendar days after the election. So one section says the law states the postal indicator is required, but the other section does not. The 2024 voters pamphlet states if you mail your ballot, it must have a USPS postmark by 8 p.m. on election day, but apparently that isn't true. We find this law to be a major vulnerability with 1, a 7-day window to continue accepting ballots by mail, and 2, no requirement for a postal indicator. At the March 19th board work session, the May 2024 primary election overview was presented. Elections Division Manager Dan Forrester spoke about the recent legislation allowing election offices to accept mailed ballots with a postmark for 7 days after the election day, but he did not mention the part of the law stating ballots without postmarks or with illegible postmarks may also be accepted. During the presentation, members of the board inquired about the number of ballots that arrived by mail after Election Day, and Mr. Forrester reported he believed the November 22 election was a few hundred ballots. However, according to the BP 032 report, over 4,000 ballots were received by mail within the 7-day window after Election Day during the November 2022 election. Earlier in the year, during the primary election of May 2022, according to the BP 015 report, over 11,000 ballots were received and over 10,000 were accepted in the 7-day window after Election Day. This represents over 7% of the ballots tallied. The BP 015 report includes all ballots received in the 7 days after the election. While speaking to an election observer the evening of February 2024 King City recall election, Mr. Forrester stated the elections office would be accepting and counting the ballots received by mail for the 7 days post-election day with or without postmarks. According to the SEL 904 report, the King City recall election accepted 73 mailed ballots after Election Day, 1 without a postmark. This represents over 4% of the ballots tallied in the 4 recall elections that were decided by a margin of 24 to 47 votes. The legality of receiving mailed ballots after Election Day is being challenged across the United States. On October 25th, 2024, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit invalidated a Mississippi election law that allowed mail-in and absentee election ballots as long as they were sent on or before Election Day. The unanimous appeals court ruled that the Mississippi law was invalid because it violated the electors clause of the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution's Electors Clause states that election day shall be the same throughout the United States. The court interpreted this day to mean the day when an election was consummated, meaning closed and ready to tabulate votes. Federal law requires voters to take timely steps to vote by election day, and federal law does not permit the state of Mississippi to extend the period for voting by 1 day, 5 days, or 100 days. The state's contrary law is preempted. Commissioners, we request the 7-day extension to receive ballots by mail be removed. Require ballots to be received by election officials no later than Election Day, as we did prior to 2022. At the very least, require mailed ballots to contain a postal indicator. Make Election Day be Election Day. This is one of several examples of Oregon state law being in violation of federal law. This provides another reason why Washington County needs to protect its citizens' civil rights by separating itself from state practices. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. I'm Mary Halkiopoulos, a Washington County resident for 23 years. Today, I'd like to talk to you about our voter rolls and what we learned through a case study that was performed by the citizens of Washington County. The case study included a review of voter registration records from October 2020 to January 2023. The focus of the study was on deceased voters, but it brought to light many anomalies with our voter rolls. Out of about 11,300 records reviewed, we found 2,537 deceased individuals. Please refer to the breakout numbers. Without getting overly granular, of the 2,537 deceased individuals, 1,798 were eventually removed, some as many as 8 years after death. Of the remaining 739, or 29%, their active or inactive status is as follows. 88 were active when they died, and they stayed on the rolls as active for up to 10 years. 234 were already designated inactive when they died, and they stayed inactive for up to 8 years. 54 records were updated once after death to active and remained on the rolls. 323 records were updated once after death to inactive and remained on the rolls. 32 records were updated twice. 19 went from inactive to, were updated to inactive and then to active. 2 inactive to inactive, 8 updated to active, then to inactive, and 3 updated to active, then to active again. 6 records were updated 3 times to inactive, then to inactive, to inactive, then to active, then to inactive again. 2 deceased people were added to the rolls after they died. One is active and one is inactive. Additional information we found includes 15 deceased people cast a total of 21 ballots well after death. They were repeaters. 6 of these individuals are still on the October 2024 rolls, 3 as active and 3 inactive. 9 people who died shortly before the election also cast ballots. It's possible they voted right before they died. 15 deceased were updated with a change of address, one of them twice, and none of them to the cemetery. 8 registrations were removed with cancellations backdated to the date of death up to 11 years prior. 494 of the deceased, or 19.5%, violated the National Voter Registrations Act. 261 of the deceased, or 10%, were in the National Voter Registration Act statutory waiting period. Through the efforts of the citizens who worked on this project, about 700 deceased people were removed from the Washington County voter rolls. The names and obituaries were submitted to the elections office, where staff removed the individuals. Another about 200 or so names have yet to be removed. What we learned from this process: our voter rolls are a complete mess and out of compliance with federal law. Our findings completely support the issues spelled out in the Judicial Watch lawsuit. The state of our voter rolls opens the door to fraud and potentially nullifies the votes of eligible voters. There is no uniform process by which deceased are removed. Many remain active or are left on the rolls as inactive, wherein they can periodically resurrect. A byproduct of our study shows that those who move out of the county or the state are often left on the rolls for years. House Bill 2681 passed in 2021, I believe, and put into place in 22, sorry, this might be wrong, encourages dirty voter rolls and is in direct violation of federal law. The state of Oregon has lost control of registrations statewide. It has outsourced voter roll maintenance and provided personal information to the Elections Registration Information Center, ERIC, an out-of-state nonprofit initially funded by George Soros. Because of this, our county elections office also has no ongoing real control over our county voter rolls. One thing we have found disturbing is that there is a lack of understanding among election staff that not managing the voter rolls and leaving inactive voters on the rolls for years violates federal law. One person said, as long as a person is inactive, he feels comfortable with that. Well, feelings are good, but following the law is much better. We need to educate election staff and to disconnect our voter rolls from the centralized system and go back to in-county voter roll management. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next, we have Jill Latre and Brenda Brunetti.
Go ahead, Ms. Latre.
Good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. My name is Jill Latre. I've been a Washington County resident for 33 years. I'm here today to talk about the Judicial Watch lawsuit recently filed against our Secretary of State. As outlined in the lawsuit, Section 8 of the National Voter Registration Act, NRVA, provides that each state shall conduct a general program that makes a reasonable effort to remove the names of ineligible voters from the official list of eligible voters. This includes the names of voters who have become ineligible by reason of death or change of address. The largest number of registrations subject to removal under the NVRA usually belongs to those who have changed residence. According to the NVRA, when a state receives notice from the U.S. Postal Service that a voter has changed residence, the registrar is supposed to send the person a confirmation notice, a forwardable, prepaid, pre-addressed return card by which the voter verifies the change or corrects the information. The period of time from the date of the confirmation notice through the next 2 general federal elections is called the statutory waiting period. If the voter fails to respond to the confirmation notice and then fails to vote or contact the registrar, during that period, the registration is to be removed from the list of eligible voters. Federal and state regulations refer to voter registrations as inactive when a voter has failed to respond to a confirmation notice but is still within the statutory waiting period. A voter with an inactive registration may still vote on election day, for instance, by appearing at the election office and saying they forgot to return their confirmation notice. Hence, inactive voters are still registered voters. On June 29, 2023, the EAC published its biennial NVRA-related report to the 118th Congress. You have a link provided to you on your paper. The data Oregon transmitted to the EAC shows that from November 2020 to November 2022, 19 Oregon counties removed 0 voter registrations. 10 other counties removed 11 or fewer voter registrations pursuant to the NVRA statute. Washington County was among the latter 10. These 29 counties reported a combined total of 2,404,849 voter registrations as of November 2022, yet they only removed 36 registrations during the reporting period. During the October 1st presentation to the board, Dan Forrester reported there were about 400,000 registered voters on the rolls. In reality, there were 485,466 registered voters on October 1st, Washington County rolls. 390,883 were designated as active, and 89,346, or 18.4%, were designated as inactive. Of the inactive voters, 37,986, 42.5%, were inactivated at some point before the 2020 election, and they did not vote in the 2020 or the 2022 general elections. They are in violation of the NVRA statute. As an aside, 2,194 of them were inactivated prior to 2015, with the oldest inactivation dated on May 19, 1978. In addition, 5 people were inactivated on January 1st, year 0001, and 2 others were inactivated on December 31st, year 9999. As the lawsuit points out, Oregon is out of compliance with federal law. The NVRA supersedes and preempts any Oregon law or practice that prevents adherence to the law. The Secretary of State has failed in her statutory duties to coordinate state responsibilities under the NVRA. This failure affects all Oregon counties, including ours. It provides us with a reason and platform by which Washington County can exercise its option of home rule to disconnect its voter rolls from the statewide centralized system and to make the other needed changes in our local elections as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Barati.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Honorable Commissioners. My name is Brenda Barati, and I've been a resident of Washington County for 31 years. I'm here to express my confidence in our election system here in Oregon and across the United States. Claims of rigged machines, illegal ballot harvesting, voting by non-citizens, dead voters, and many other allegations simply does not make it so. In fact, American election fraud is minuscule according to the Brookings Institution. The conservative Heritage Foundation found that the share of reported cases of fraud in the past 13 to 38 years across several swing states is less than 1%. In Pennsylvania, the foundation analyzed 30 years of data across 32 elections. Only 39 cases of voter fraud were identified. That's 0.00039% of more than 100 million ballots cast. Election fraud has never affected an election in recent memory. Claims of election fraud here in Oregon are often driven by out-of-state groups. As the Oregonian recently reported, the Missouri-based group Sovereign Citizens claims of massive irregularities, illegal voting, and potential crimes in the 22 election in Oregon are filled with misunderstandings and comparing the voter data set between May of 2022 and September of 2023, more than a year after the election. Oregon elections officials were able to show why all of the group's 23 allegations of voter registration and election irregularities lack merit. Oregon's dedication to election security can be seen in the recent issue when it was revealed that 1,259 non-citizens were registered to vote through the DMV. Only 9 voted, one of whom was later found to actually be a citizen. That's 9 voters out of Oregon's over 3 million registered voters. Hardly an election swinging number. An investigation was promptly launched. It revealed not a conspiracy, but errors on the part of DMV staff. Fixes were swift, adjustments were made to the software, and there's now a daily audit by managers to verify documents before they get sent to the Secretary of State. Here in Washington County, I have personally been an election observer on Election Day. What I saw was a room of dedicated people quietly and systematically processing ballots. I was able to view the entire room. I saw nothing that would prompt me to claim election fraud of any kind. The election results of 2020 and the midterms of 2022 were not fraud. It's simply that Trump and his candidates lost. The American people and Oregonians just did not buy what they were selling. 62 court cases were filed, challenging various aspects of the 2020 election. Trump prevailed on only one in a minor issue. In the other 61 cases, the courts, including judges appointed by Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and determined there was not widespread fraud. The denial of election results resulted in an attack on our Capitol to overturn the will of the people.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, we ask you to be respectful. No one interrupted prior testimony. We should not start now.
Thank you very much. I requested that time be deleted from my allotted time. The denial of election results resulted in an attack on our Capitol to overturn the will of the people. Those insurrectionists believed the lie that the 2020 election was stolen. This lie has resulted in death threats against election workers, and these death threats are nonpartisan. Loyal Republicans, such as the former election official in Maricopa County, Arizona, faced multiple death threats. Many election workers across the country have quit due to violent threats. And we see the burning of ballot boxes here in Oregon and Washington. These tactics are anti-democratic and un-American. They're the tactics of terrorists, and it is amplified on social media by our enemies, Russia, Iran, China, and North Korea. A recent video supposedly showing ballots with votes for Trump being ripped up in Pennsylvania, another false claim, was manufactured and amplified by Russian actors, according to the FBI. Our enemies are delighted that many Americans believe and repeat these claims. Claims of election fraud are a tool to divide us, to make voting harder for certain groups of people, and to cast doubt on democracy. We all need to push back on this. We are all Americans. We're all Oregonians. We can disagree on policy, but we must be united in our support of democracy and allowing all citizens to vote freely without fear. And let us start that here right in Washington County. Thank you.
Clerk Moss, do we have anyone else who wishes to address us today?
We have one more, Janet Bailey.
And that will be our last, as we will have reached our 30-minute mark.
Thank you. My name is Janet Bailey. I've lived in Washington County for 25 years. I love Oregon, and I love Washington County, but I'm very disappointed that over the last several meetings here, people have shown undisputable, undeniable research and proof that our elections in Washington County are illegal and do not abide by the codes that are on our books for the laws in Washington County. Over the last few meetings, we have had multitudes of concerned citizens come to this mic and appear in the audience as well, showing their concern, genuine concern over what's going on in our election system. I am asking you to hear the voices of the people of Washington County who call out your representation of us to reflect the values and hopes of the citizens in Washington County. You might say that our voting machines are more proficient. Well, then why are our voting machines, why is our voting process as a whole taking so long? These are areas of concern now well explored on. Several states have dropped ERIC, but Oregon still uses ERIC. What makes a person inactive? When we asked why people move, they still are on the voter rolls. They're off the voter rolls. They're deceased. Then they're back on the voter rolls. 10 people voted from 1 to 2 houses that were registered in that house. In processing ballots, candid positions were not considered. Bubbles shifted and were out of place. In 1998, voters voted by mail, in person, in precincts. We would like to go back to that process. I'm asking you to align with fair, just, and honest elections that give freedom, justice, and prosperity to Washington County. Fair and honest elections are the rock stabilization of our country. If we don't have fair and honest elections, we're sunk. Please consider what's been said here this morning. We're asking for change. We're asking that you participate in making our Washington County elections fair and honest. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our second public comment period for today's meeting. And now we have board announcements. I'd like to start by announcing our upcoming meetings. This Thursday, November 7th, we'll have a roundtable that starts at 9. Next Tuesday, November 12th, is work session day only. Meeting starts at 9. The following Tuesday, November 19th, we have a work session in the afternoon starting at 2 and a board meeting in the evening at 6:30 p.m. And that's the full set of meetings for November. We will not be having any Board of Commissioner meetings the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. Then we're into the month of December. I don't know about you, but I'm not ready for a new year yet. But December is almost upon us. Tuesday, December 3rd, work session starts at 9. We'll pause that and reconvene later. The Housing Authority Board of Directors meeting will start at 10, and the Board of Commissioners, Clean Water Services Board of Directors meeting will follow the Housing Authority meeting subsequently, probably around 10:15. Thursday, December 5th, we'll have a roundtable that starts at 10. Tuesday, December 10th, we'll have a work session starting at 1 in the afternoon, followed by a board meeting that evening at 6:30. And then we'll have a third set of Tuesday meetings for the month of December. Work session starts at 9 and a board meeting at 10. And that will be not only the final board meeting of 2024, but it will be the end of a 40-year tenure for Commissioner Roy Rogers. Are there any other board announcements for today? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn today's meeting of Tuesday, November 5th, 2024?
So move.
I second that motion.
We have a motion. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, 5-0. We are hereby adjourned. Thank you.